It's 5 o'clock. Please rise and join me for the pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll begin with our open forum. Is there anyone that would like to come forward and address the board at this time? Okay, then we'll move on to celebrating our successes. And we have the Minnesota Association of Alternative Programs, Johanna Thomas.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. I'm just going to quickly introduce our presenters tonight. I have Mrs. Paula Olson, our English teacher, and MapStars advisor, and then 3 of our MapStars students are going to present to you tonight, Yossi, Ellie, and Tatiana. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Yoselin.
My name is Tatiana.
My name is Ellie.
And I'm Paula Olson.
And we're here to talk to you guys a little bit about MapStars. Our motto is we make a difference.
And our colors are black and gold.
And our symbol is a gold star. And MapStars, MapStars represents Minnesota
Association of Alternative Programs, and the STARS stands for Success,
Teamwork, Achievement, Recognition, and Self-Esteem.
The purpose of MapStars for our whole school goals is to work to improve our school environment, be a voice for the needs of students, and change public perspective through positive actions. And then some of our personal goals to develop was leadership skills, teamwork, confidence, and better self-esteem, and being able to step out of our comfort zones and try new things, becoming a better public speaker, and working together as a team.
There are 3 statewide events that take place within MapStars. There's a Fall Leadership Conference, Legislative Day up at the Capitol, and the Spring Conference, and the next few slides will highlight what happens at those.
This was the Fall Leadership Conference this year. The top right picture is team building activity where there was blocks on the floor and we had to memorize them in order to be able to pass it. And then the bottom right is more team building and connecting with other students from different schools, so you got to know their names.
This is more team building. They worked with a motivational speaker by the name of Carl the Energizer Olson. And then they also got to hear, I think there was like 10 different students throughout the state of Minnesota that applied to be officers, statewide officers for MapStars. And they listened to their speeches, and then following them, the collective body then voted for who they wanted for officers for this school year.
This is just a picture that we took outside of the camp.
Okay. And then Legislative Day takes place in February. So our MapStars program, this is just our 2nd full year, and we haven't gotten there yet because it takes place in February, and last year the weather was pretty rough. So we're hoping we get to go. I can only take 2 students with me up there for that conference, but it's a great opportunity for them to meet with legislators and promote funding for alternative programming and promote the MapStars program. And they get to spend time just conversing with those guys, and then also seeing how our government works.
This is the spring conference. There's a couple pictures there, and spring conference takes place in May.
So this was last year.
This is our team last year holding ribbons of what we placed. We had community service project team. We got a gold. Parenting and decision making team. We got a gold. Parenting and decision making was they gave us a story, and they had us decide what would we do and have us be in their shoes and see what we would do in that position that they are in. Public speaking, Allie and Triana got gold and silver. Malachi, for his job interview, he got bronze medal. We got first place school annual program, and Triana got 8th place overall speech.
This is just some of the medals and certificates with level of achievements we got when we came back home from the spring conference.
And this year, our goal is to fill that whole table with plaques.
And then this is just some miscellaneous pictures we had at the spring conference last year.
So beyond the statewide events, there's also a number of school and local activities that the students participate in, and they create to build community and be good community servants.
This was one of the things we did. It was called Alzheimer's Walk, and some of us students participated, like helping little groups, children's play, a gift shop, and there was more, but I forgot what they were called.
We created our own Jenga blocks for a kickoff picnic we had this year for the kickoff of the beginning of school year. So we did that outside of school.
A little thing, what Tatiana said, kickoff, we decided to do a kickoff for the first day, or try to do it for the first day of school. So our new students that we had at the ALC, we wanted to welcome them and have them feel comfortable there with the students that have been there. So a kickoff picnic just sounded great for us. This was all going through lunch. It was our period lunchtime.
And then we also volunteered for the Halverson School Kindness Retreat, where we were leaders for little 5th graders, so we had our own little groups.
And the end of September, we start with Hello Week. And what it's about, it's partnered with the Sandy Hook Promise. And students during that week learn how to identify students that aren't included, that maybe feel left out or disenfranchised. And to kick the week off, we created this kindness tree. And you see all the hands on the tree. We had administration from all the buildings sign their name. We had students and other staff that were within the Riverland building. And it was just a promise that we would be kind and, kind of dedicate ourselves to being kind. And also on the hand, there was like a word of what they thought kindness, meant or looked like to them. So that was how we kicked it off.
This was one of the things we did during Start with Hello Week. We did karaoke where students and staff could sing if they wanted to, and it brought other kids out of their comfort zone to sing in front of other students, so that was a good thing.
Then we also had a tie-dye and low splash bleach day where students brought accessories or clothes or something they wanted to tie-dye for that day.
Second quarter projects that we did were Gold Gloves, Cards for Veterans, We Are Thankful, A Smiled with a Child, Ugly Sweater Day. Gold Gloves, we put candy in a little baggie, a see-through baggie, and had them like for Halloween, like ghosts. We passed them around. Cards for Veterans, we went to Good Sam's and we made homemade cards and went around Good Sam's nursing home and passed around thank you for the veterans. And here's just a couple pictures of us delivering, making Gold Gloves.
And then our community service project this year is Smile with a Child. We also did it last year, but we called it Change for Change. And we're raising money to purchase gifts for families this holiday.
And our goal this year is $600, and we are currently at $278.04.
We have been working with the Halverson social worker where they help us get a family and we raise money and purchase gifts for this holiday, Christmas.
Just a little note on the project. That's ongoing right now. It'll end, the fundraising will end December 13th. And so these guys have really been working hard at bringing that money in. The family's anonymous. We don't know who they are. All we get is ages of the children. And, you know, last year we filled Miss Frank's vehicle from the very front to the back. There wasn't room for the social worker hardly to get in the car. And so we're hoping to do the same. They have cans in different businesses this year. We have them scattered into Riverland and where else? Oh, and there's also happens to be one down in the district office if you're interested in donating. And we just really, really thank you for your support. This program wouldn't happen without you and your support.
Well, I want to give you thank you for your support as well. It's a big, huge thing for us that you guys are supporting us and being there and helping us go through this. And yep.
There was we talked with the students at the fall conference, and they were explaining to us how their district doesn't support MapStars, so they have to fundraise their own money. So, like, even their program, they have to do it after school, and they don't get credit at all for it. So we just wanted to say we appreciate you.
It really makes a difference to our students that this is something that's a line item funded opportunity for them to go to the state conference. I can say that, you know, I could literally see my students grow, change, transform, and, excuse me. So if we didn't have the funding, they'd be out begging for money to run the program like these other schools do. But thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you for your passion, first of all, as a teacher, and also the students for all the projects. When you said that you won a community service award, I was thinking to myself, I wonder what that was, and then you showed all the pictures, and so thank you for that. And I do have one question. You know, when you look at all these programs, you always wonder that's how you're affected today, but my question is, how do you think it'll affect you later in life?
Well, my story is I used to be a very troublemaker, everything. I wasn't really good in school, and I came to the ALC and I heard about MapStars. And I really, at the time, thought, well, what is it? What am I supposed to do? Is it just, oh, okay, well, I'm in a class. It's an extra credit. You really go into the class and really participate in every event that you do, and it hits you. You're there to help other people, not yourself. It's not just a credit. You're there, you're participating in a school, you're participating in other events that you probably wouldn't even do if you weren't in that class. So it changed me a lot. That class is my motivation to basically move on. And the new people I meet, the new students I meet that's in there, I mean, it changes you. It really does.
Great, thank you very much for sharing. Other questions or comments?
Thank you all for participating in this as well. It's a wonderful program, and I had the same question about how it had impacted you, so thank you for sharing that. I noticed one of your first points was that to affect the environment in your school. How has your environment in your school been changed?
Well, usually there's a lot of kids complaining like that they don't do anything except they're staring at a computer all day, because that's what all of us are on. So like they say like how much they appreciate us for like doing like picnics and handing out other stuff, just doing different activities just to at least get away for a little while.
I can say too, you're talking about changing. This one here, she wouldn't speak. I'm very proud of her. That one, this is her first year in MapStars, Miss Ellie. And on the way up to the conference, where I was talking about public speaking, she says, no way. Here she is. Yeah. And this one, she never quits talking.
You all are doing amazing work. It's fun to see where you're at and what you're doing, and hopefully you'll be able to just keep moving forward and doing even more. Congratulations and keep it up.
Thank you.
You know, I looked at the goals of the program. Those are fantastic, and you live them out. So that's the key is you can always have goals, but the important thing is that you live them out. So thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I should tell you, those binders that are going around, those were what we took to the state conference last year. The community service project that got gold there, and then the one that Jill has is our program plan for the year, so that highlights everything that we did last year. So you know.
Okay. All right. Thank you again. Our next item of business is tonight's agenda. I'd entertain some motions.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I would note that Dr. Funk is on here remotely, and Dave Kloss going to be leaving a little bit early. He's got a surgery scheduled for tomorrow morning, and so he's going to travel to that. So hopefully his knee will be better when he comes back. So next we have the consent items. What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to reports, Dr. Funk.
Good evening, everybody. I'm up at the Minnesota Rural Educator Association Conference up at Brainerd today, and Mary Jo's up here, and we have a couple of principals along with us for their annual conference. The highlight of today at the conference was we had lunch with Governor Walz. He came and spoke to the group, and his big emphasis was trying to get funding away from local referendums and have the state do the funding. So that's an admirable goal, and that'd be great if we could get there. So that was his real push today. He talked about, I think, 87% of operating levies were renewed by voters this year, or not renewed, but approved by voters this year, and 82% of bonds were at the election last week. And again, his thought is, and many people's thoughts are, we're having to go out and continually ask voters for funding when really, the Constitution of the state says that we should be providing adequate funding for our schools. So he's still going to push that as we move forward here. A couple notes from last meeting. We are working on the MCA opt-out data, and what we are doing is looking at students' GPAs, and we'll have it hopefully at the December meeting here for you, but be able to compare students' GPAs in general versus opt-out, who opts out on the MCA test at the high level. So we're looking forward to having that information. We're also looking at the academy impact on graduation rates, and we'll bring that forward at the same time. There was a question, I believe, a few weeks ago about the memorial at Hammer Field and what we're doing out there with that, and we were going to meet a couple of individuals in the community. The day we were going to meet, one of the two architects had to reschedule, so I would imagine we'll either be meeting the end of this week or hopefully early next week to hear some of the thoughts on the memorial. We have the insurance committee meeting on Thursday. The purpose of that meeting is to develop a survey with our insurance committee for employees to get their input on some possible ideas for insurance plans as we go out for RFPs later this winter or late winter, early spring. Calendar committee will be meeting in the next few weeks as we develop a calendar for next year, and we'll have the calendar committee meet, and then we'll bring our recommendation to the school board here, hopefully at the regular December meeting. I've got a lot of good information on youth apprenticeship opportunities, and that seems to be the way things are going statewide, nationwide. There is just a big push towards providing more work opportunities to work with industry and community colleges to meet the needs of our students in our communities. And I'm getting a lot of information on that, and I'll be sharing that with you as well at a future meeting. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to board reports, and I can't remember where I started last time, which side. So I'm going to go with you, Kim.
That sounds good. I do have a follow-up question, Mike, for you on your report. What the makeup of the committee for the insurance, is that kind of a blended makeup of teachers, staff, kind of?
Yes, there's a member from every bargaining unit in the district is on that committee. Okay. And I think Neil will be, Neil has sat on it historically, and I asked him a few weeks ago, and he'll also be sitting on it as a board member as well. So, but yeah, it's a rather large committee.
Okay, great. I had a few things that I had the opportunity to attend. Probably my most favorite thing was I got to serve breakfast to about, oh gosh, there must have been 100 plus students last Friday for the athletic and activities honor roll breakfast. And so it was just great to see them. And there was a lot of chatter, and a lot of the coaches were there, and it was really positive. There's something coming out of the activities office that's new, so I was excited to be there for that. Also, I attended the girls' soccer banquet. I was personally vested in that, but I also it was a proud moment because 7 of our 8 seniors that are on the varsity squad received the Big 9 honor roll, and they have to maintain a 3.75 or above, and I think that's huge in the direction our district wants to go. So I was really proud of that. I did attend the business ed committee meeting as well. I think Neil was there. Yes. And we have there's going to be rolling out some great things kind of going along with Mike talked about youth apprenticeship and that partnership with community college and industry. So that'll be exciting stuff coming out. I also attended the Blue Zone Leadership, and they work really closely with the district as well. And I'm actually going to be going off of that because there's a different Riverland representative there. And I did get the opportunity to participate in ALETA-sponsored a community stakeholders assessment or
I guess that would be the best way to do that. It's like a strategic plan for the community. I'm on the chamber board, so I had the opportunity to participate in the results piece. And again, very exciting for the school district and for the education piece and working with industry. So lots of great things to come.
Not much, I'll be brief. As Kim mentioned, I'm on the Biz Ed Committee meeting, and we met in at their new setting, which is on Broadway. That was kind of exciting. It's a nice place. Some items on the Education Foundation, routine things involving the Pathways to Success, and they lit their way programs. There's some issues with placement of plaques in high school, and I'm working to resolve those. Talked to Mark Roseklaus and Manny Stiles, and it'll be fine. I'm still working on bringing up to date the website and other records. There's a binder that includes the history of all the honorees in both categories, distinguished alumnus and the distinguished educators. And it's a work in progress. I'm getting close. Negotiations going well. Meeting tomorrow with the teachers, and I think a week from tomorrow with the paras, and they are in mediation. And is Kathy here? Yeah, how are things with the custodians? It look promising? We will find out on Thursday. All right. Meeting with the custodians on Thursday and making progress there. That's it.
I attended the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Freeborn County Family Services Collaborative. So it's a group of a lot of different community members. Different school districts are represented. Different community agencies and government agencies as well are at the table. And it's led by Jenny Hendrickson, the collaborator. The SWAY group at Southwest is going well. That's the new student group there. Also, we've been talking a lot about finding funding for this whole committee and collaborative process since the other grant had run out. And there's a grant prospect that is out there for innovative things that communities put into action. And so we had a brainstorming session there, and Burke Egner and Nikki Sievertson were there from Southwest and had some really great ideas and already have a good start on an innovative project here for this whole community area, surrounding communities as well, because we know that drug use is no respecter of school district or family or city. It's an issue that we all are dealing with, and so I think there'll be some exciting news coming out in the next few months as we brainstorm how we want to move ahead with this initiative. Thank you.
From a state level, I was reelected to the MSBA Insurance Trust Board for 4 more years, and from our local level, I had a lot of fun at the PLC at Halverson School a week ago, and looking forward to seeing many more of those, Ashley. After I get back, I'm ready to go. But a lot of fun to see the grassroots, speaking of the teachers, and just kind of get a little bit, be able to ask a question or two, and then just listen a whole lot. Thank you.
I don't think I have anything to report.
Yes?
I was able to attend the Worksite Wellness, and they're going to have a couple of events coming up. January 13th, the Community Wellbeing, and then May 9th, Blue Zone Walk Run. I know there's some work being done with the schools with the balance bikes. That'll be cool if we can get that pulled off and put together. I was on the Education Foundation. I have graciously bowed off of that. I am going to continue to work with Brad and Neil on the governance and the bylaws and pieces. It's just time consumption. I'll just leave it at that. Business Ed, you two were at, I was out of town for that one, so lots going on. And I also, before Aaron jumps in, we were able to be at the rural healthcare fair. I know Neil and Kim were at it, and I told Aaron that I was going to bow out on saying anything on it because he would have to give the full report. But Aaron was there doing some of the video and was doing a fantastic job.
Just a comment on the business or the Education Foundation thing that Dennis graciously resigned from. And it's, Dennis did a great job. He's a great person to have on any board, but quite frankly, we really don't need 3 school board members on that board. Although we do need to maintain a school district connection. And I think it's a wonderful arrangement where board members chair committees, as Brad does, Kirshner, and then non-board members, people who have some vested interest and some insight into that area, serve on those committees. And that way, the board members don't have to do everything. I think a lot of boards should operate that way, have ad hoc committees where other people are involved. So thank you, Dennis, for your commitment.
Yeah, I spent many years on the board, and it wasn't, well, it's better you're going the way you're going, I'll put it that way. Okay. I just want to mention also to the board that I think it was back in August, we had agreed that we would do a superintendent evaluation twice a year, and so first time will be here in December, so I'll be getting information out to everyone on that so we can proceed as we had planned. So with that, Aaron, you have a report for us, please?
Yeah, so I was at the healthcare roundtable discussion, and it was very informational. I learned a lot about our ambulance service, a lot more to that than I ever thought. But then Albert Lea High School, I think a week ago today, honored 5 veterans at our Veterans Day ceremony. Their names were Matt Larson, Connor Larson, Garrett Larson, Chandra Hundley, and William Keselowski. And that was a pretty good ceremony there. We had the choir perform, the band perform. It was very, very great. Then the National Honor Society has begun with their first meeting of the year for new members today, and we have a blood drive coming up at the high school. And then I was given the opportunity to be very briefly on KAMT News on last Friday to discuss school safety.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is your first time here, so welcome.
I was here in the summer when it was at the fire station.
Oh, okay.
I remember what time.
Okay, good, thank you. Next, we have the world's best workforce, Julie Eaton.
All right, good evening. All right, that's okay. Bye. All right, so I'm here to present, obviously, about the World's Best Workforce, our annual report. So I'll be reporting on our plan from last year, as well as our plan for this current school year. To start, I just want to remind you of our teaching and learning vision of that we collaborate to provide high levels of student engagement through quality instruction that improves student learning now. And so part of the collaboration with creating this report is working with our district administrators and teachers and staff, getting their input regarding some of these goals that we've created, as well as working with the district curriculum committee and taking community members' input as well towards these action steps and strategies as we work towards these goals. So pathways to success are obviously our overarching goals that we're working towards in everything that we do here in Albert Lea. These goals that I'm going to be presenting on are sort of intermediate goals, SMART goals. As teachers, we talk about our SMART goals quite often, and that big piece of wanting them to be attainable, but also stretch ourselves to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for all of our students. There's a lot of text in here, so I apologize for that. I promise we will get you a copy of this after the meeting. All right, so the first performance measure that I'm going to discuss is that all children are ready for school. And so our goal that we set for the last school year, 18-19, was that 90% of incoming kindergartners would be attending preschool programming. And so there were quite a number of action steps that we take in this community to make sure that as many 3-4-year-olds are attending preschool as possible. And so our collaborating with community meetings, working at the elementary schools, parent-teacher conferences, knowing which siblings are coming, make sure that they're ready for preschool, et cetera. So, go back, sorry. So we'll continue to make sure that this is a focus, obviously, for this school year as well. So the goal that we're setting now for this school year is in regards to some of our FastBridge early reading benchmarking assessments that we do, and looking to make sure that students are prepared as they come into kindergarten. And so this year, the percent of kindergarten students that were at some to low risk in our fall benchmark scores was about 73%. And so we're wanting to increase that by 5% to reach our target of 78. The way that we plan to do this is to continue our strong PLC work that Dave mentioned at each of our schools, working in collaborative teams. We're continuing to review state standards, identify essential outcomes, and creating formative assessments for our students. Our early childhood teachers participated in extensive phonemic awareness and phonics training by our literacy consultant that has come to our district a number of times now, making sure that our collaborative teams, our kindergarten teachers, are working with our early childhood teachers as well. I should mention that. At the top right, our outreach to Mayo Health Services, making sure that pediatricians are aware of the pre-K programs that are available to help get the word out to families. Also making sure that we post advertisements and things at the public library and at the hospital for families to see. Also thinking about the multiple languages that our families speak, and so making sure that we're posting things in the languages that are appropriate for our families. Our success coaches are also doing a nice job supporting the families and making sure that we're being proactive and informing families of what's available for their children. Moving on to the second performance measure is all third graders can read at grade level. And so last year we set the goal that 80% of our students would be on target for third grade reading proficiency. And to try to reach that goal, we've worked with Paul Farmer, our PLC consultant from Solution Tree. We did a revamping of our collaborative teams. We've done quite a bit of the phonemic awareness training that I know you guys were able to participate in a bit as well. We've had an EL specialist come from MDE to our district multiple times in the last couple of years to make sure we're supporting multilingual students as well as supporting all of our students. We have instructional coaches at each of our buildings, and we're working on our multi-tiered systems of support as well. And so as a district, unfortunately our percentage didn't get to where we wanted it to be, but moving forward, for the 2019-2020 school year, we want to increase our proficiency, our third graders' proficiency in the MCA reading assessment from 42.5% to 47.5%. So again, a 5-point increase. And so we'll continue our work with our phonemic awareness work. We're continuing our work with our EL support specialist. And we are going to, we also utilize Responsive Classroom in our elementary buildings. Most of our teachers have been trained in Responsive Classroom, just building that culture and that community-based classroom environment. And we're going to continue building our collaborative teams. And then we also have support available from the Regional Centers of Excellence. She has come to our district at least twice now that I know of, conducting walkthroughs of the building and reviewing what she sees and identifying some areas where we can grow and where we're also what we're doing well, but to help all of our students in the process. Performance measure number 3 has to do with closing the achievement gap among all of our students. And last year we had set the goal of 90% of students. We'll achieve on the reading MCA assessment and math assessment with no ethnic group below 85% by the year 2025. And so all of our teachers in the district have gone through our cultural competency training, and we're, again, the PLCs as well as the EL support. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the graphs of our actual percentages from 2018, 2019 in reading as well as in math. And then the ethnic groups that are represented there are based on the cell size being large enough to have a percentage to report. For the 2019-2020 school year, we've set a goal that we will decrease the gap in reading and math proficiency rates on the MCA reading and math assessments for all racial and ethnic groups by 5 percentage points. So the numbers that you see in these graphs are in comparison to our white group of students. And so the numbers are representing the gap that we have right now. So for example, Hispanic and Latino students, in 2018, there was a gap of 29.9. In 2019, 27.8. We want to decrease that by 5 percentage points to get to that 22.8. And so you can see that some of the gaps did decrease. So the Asian subgroup in math from 18 to 19 decreased slightly. And then in reading, we did have decrease in the gaps from 18 to 19 in each of those categories. And so we want to continue with that, as you see in blue, the targets for 2020.
So could you go back to the previous slide, please? So this was their actual proficiency in 18 and 19?
Correct.
Okay, and it looks like in all areas they decreased overall in proficiency other than one that came up 0.10%. Okay, I guess that's concerning to me to see all of those decrease. And then the other piece, when you go to the next slide, is that when the entire proficiency has decreased, there by the law of mathematics, I guess, would be less room for gapping. And so the gaps have also gotten smaller. So I guess that was a point that I was seeing there. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that is a concern. So based on that concern, we do have our multi-tiered systems of support that we're trying to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. We're working with our EL specialist on that, specifically on Talk Read, Talk Write, which is supporting multilingual students, but it is also a great strategy to make sure that all of our students are having the opportunity to speak in each of our classes every single day, to read and to write. And we're also new this year, the High Reliability Schools framework is underway, and so we are working on level 1, which is building a safe and collaborative culture in each of our buildings. All right, so now performance measure number 4, all students are ready for career in college. So last year we set a goal in regards to the Naviance program, and that is a program that we wanted 100% of our students to identify career and college pathways. And so what we've done is 8th graders and 9th graders all were able to take a course, either the Pathways course or the counselors visited the geography or physical science classes to make sure that all students had the opportunity to participate in this program. And it was also at Southwest in the Tiger program. Those students, the 6th and 7th graders, were able to identify some of their strengths and whatnot to identify careers that they might be interested in the future. The ALC also uses this program as well. Then the AP, the ACT, the AccuPlacer, the ASVAB exams were all offered for all of our students, depending on which exam that they felt was pertinent to their career or college goals. And we've increased our College in the Schools programming as well as post-secondary options for our students. Success coaches are also supporting our multilingual students and helping to communicate with families so we don't have that barrier, making sure that everyone knows what is available for them. And finally, the 8th grade academy and 9th grade academy has been working on helping this goal to become a reality as well, because a part of the goal too. And so now, so we have the Naviance program, and then we also had the 8th graders proficient on the math MCA. And so here's the reality of the progress towards our goal from last year. How many have been assessed, and how many have started a 4-year course plan. And then again, on the right, you have the number of students from 2018 and 2019 that are proficient on the 8th grade MCA math assessment.
Part of the variance in the numbers, we see them going down. Is that one class to the next? So the 8th graders now are 9th graders, so the new 7th grade came in. So does that create a lot of turmoil within one class to another?
It can, yes. So it's the same assessment, but it's a different student group, yes.
Yeah, this always occurs to me as a bit of difficulty with our determination of how well we're doing when we have the same assessments given to different kids, and then they don't do as well, and suddenly we think we're doing a horrible job, when in fact it's a measurement of a completely different group.
Do you have the data from previous years before 18 that we could compare and look for patterns?
Yes.
Could you also send that to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
We can get that. Did you write that down? Okay.
As we move forward, is there a way to track like one group of 8th graders all the way through to see any other grounds that they're making up? I think that would help some, because I'm guessing some of the kids are going to learn slower and then eventually,
Yes.
hopefully.
Yeah, there is, it takes a bit more time, but yes, it is possible to collect that data, yes.
And when we look at the, like the growth, that kind of shows us that from one year to the next for that population, correct?
Yes, if you're calculating growth data, yes, it would.
So like when we saw the MCA data from the different schools, that growth was like a student from third grade
Yes.
into fourth grade, how much they grew,
Yep,
right?
so you could
They had high
compare,
growth
looking
versus-
at third grade, so third graders taking the third grade assessment, and then fourth graders, so the same students, different assessment.
Right,
Yep.
right, that's what that growth shows.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
I don't know if this is the good time to ask, but I wanted to just kind of ask a couple questions about the early slides about preschool, the first measure.
Mhm.
Did you collect in, do you still work with other providers of preschool? So like, we used to have that jump to K kind of meeting, and just wondering if you still do that. And then, was there the goal was 90%. Do you have a percent of students we reached?
I don't have a percent as of
Okay.
right now,
Okay.
but that is something that I'm trying to get.
Sure.
And so I will ask the question too about the Jump to K program and
Okay.
see if I can get that answered for you
Sure.
as well.
And then I just, as you were showing the, go ahead.
Kim, they still meet every spring.
Oh, perfect, perfect.
Still meet every, yep, they do.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
That's great, because we know that the school district can't provide for every student, so that's
Mhm.
good that we use those partnerships. But the other thing is that as I was seeing what our, the measure, the number one, the performance measure number 1 to performance measure number 2, we went from a 72%, and then we went to, a 50. And I know it's apples to oranges, I get it, but I was trying to wrap my head around the fact that, how can we move forward with that? But then as you went to measure 3 and 4, there was that 2025. So is there a way to kind of forecast out maybe for those two as well? Because it's less daunting, of a percentage. So then we can see kind of what the other board members were talking about, can we track that and see how we're doing? It's just so hard with different group assessment, but the initial response was 73%, and now we're at third grade, we're at 50, and and I don't say this negatively, but because I know attaining a 5-point increase is a lot, but as a school board member, to see that our goal isn't even above 50% of the students, that's concerning. But if we had kind of tracked out, you know what I'm saying, to
Yes.
2025. So just some feedback there.
Sure.
Great work, though. I
Thank you.
appreciate the numbers.
All right. So then, let's see. So then this year's goal for performance measure number 4, college and career readiness, we're going to focus on the ACT, as that is a focus that the high school has been undertaking for the last couple of years at least. And so we're hoping to increase the 4 core areas of the ACT by 5 percentage points by May of 2020. So you can see the actual number and then the goal target number on the far right in blue. And so
I would have a question on that. We know that a lot of them are opting out, and so if they're opting out,
well, but this was about the ACT.
oh, okay.
The MCA, you're right. So
Okay.
this is correct. So students can take the ACT, the AccuPlacer, or the ASVAB based on if they're planning to attend college, if they're planning to go in the military, or career readiness. So these, the ACT scores would be just based on the students who are actually taking the assessment. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And so to prepare for this, some of the action steps the high school is continuing to do is that John Baylor prep course that is offered to students. It's an elective that's offered for a quarter during the school day. There are different college-level advanced placement courses offered, continuing to add more to our list. Human geography is new this year in 2019. The EL teacher takes multilingual students on field trips throughout the community to show them job opportunities that are right here in Albert Lea. There are ACT standards posters for STEM and ELA posted in several core teachers' classrooms. The teachers in their collaborative teams, their PLCs, have been talking about the standards within the ACT, as well as the Minnesota State standards, to make sure that their curriculum is aligned. And we have Latino students participate in the Latino Engineering Day at Minnesota State at Mankato. We have youth apprenticeship experiences available, teacher cadet programs, and we also have the CNA program at the high school in collaboration with Riverland. So quite a lot is offered for our students of the varying interests that they have. And so now the last measure has to do with the graduation from high school. And so last year we set a goal that 90% of our students would graduate from high school in 4 years, with no student group below 85%. And so if we keep going. So here are our results. And these are the percentages of the students graduating in 4 years. It doesn't take into account the students that are continuing on post their 4-year mark. And this, again, so data, this is the 2018 grad data, due to the fact that 2019 grad data isn't available until next March.
Does that data include all of the students with different abilities? So some that are on different IEP plans straight across the board?
Yes, so at the very bottom, we have our special education students that would be our students that have IEPs, yes. So for 2019-2020, our goal is to increase from 77.9% to 85% across the board in all of our subgroups.
There's no way, full question, sorry.
You're
There's
good.
no way to pull out those that might finish in 5 years or 5.5 years versus, because that would, I'm guessing, change those totals.
It would. So again, when the principals came, when Mark Grosskloss reported a couple weeks ago, he did show you the table that had the 4-year grad totals as well as those students that are continuing on. So yes, there is a way to track that, and that is something that we're able to watch. But for this scenario, we're looking for that 4-year graduate rate.
Just a comment on the reality of this. So we have English language learners who do not have to graduate in 4 years because they're learning the language and they can continue on. We have special education students who can continue on with their individual education plans, and that's their plan. Yet at the same time, we have the Department of Education in the state saying you got to get your graduation rate up for these subgroups when we have a lot of our students who have high needs in these subgroups, and they are by law allowed to continue on in school, but there's a disconnect between the policy or the expectations at the Department of Education and meeting the needs of our learners here.
Yeah, and I would also comment that, when you started it out, you talked about SMART goals. I'm not so sure these are realistic. The R stands for realistic, and I'm not. Just a thought from what I see.
Is the state looking at some changes on that? Because if the state's set on the 4 years, it's going to make it an uphill battle for everybody.
Yeah, Mark has really engaged them for the people from the State Department who come down and talk to us on this issue. But you know, they're holding to it at this point. So that remains to be seen.
So, in hoping that this can be realistic, we are making sure that, again, our success coaches are doing the best job that they can be. They're in classrooms this year working with our clustered groups of students that speak languages other than English. And we're really working hard in our collaborative teams to ensure that we have a viable curriculum for all students. And specifically our English department, when I was speaking with them, they've made lessening of failures in language arts courses their IGP, their individual growth plan goal, that last year and this year, and really getting to the nitty-gritty of implementing interventions and accommodations to better support students. And so those accommodations could be extended time, test retakes, increasing weekly parent contact, reteaching days, etc. And again, our high reliability schools work that we're doing will drive a lot of what we're doing to support students, making sure that they graduate on time. And we're continuing to revisit our academy program and ensuring that that's doing the best that it can for that group of students as well.
Okay, any questions or comments on the board?
Could you go back to the ACT data, please? Okay, I think one there, yeah. Oh. So does this mean that, so the students that want to go to college then took the ACT, and for example, 25% met the college readiness benchmarks. Does that mean that 75% of the students would have had to have taken remedial reading classes in college?
I am not sure.
I can answer that, Julie. So
Okay.
the current reality of this slide is the vast majority of our juniors take the ACT, and a lot of them who take it aren't even going on to college, but they have the opportunity to take it now. So this is, you know, we have roughly 38.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So about 38% of our students who graduate go get a four-year college degree. Yet we have a number of students taking the ACT who are thinking they're going to go on to college. So that's where the potential disconnect is on that slide. Yep.
So in the future, it sounds like, or that we're starting to focus more on taking the ACT, if that's your plan, taking the AccuPlacer if you have a different plan, or the ASVAB if your plan is different yet. Are we going to, as students are taking more advantage of taking the AccuPlacer instead of the ACT, if that's a better fit, are we going to be looking at that data as well?
Yes, I believe, yes, we would.
Now, tell me if I'm correct, there are students that are taking the ACT that really should be taking those other tests.
And so now that we have, now that we are offering these different assessments on the same day, it's now the work of our counselors and our teachers to make sure, informing students of what's the best fit for them.
It's really starting to align the students to the career path
Mm-hmm.
they are looking at going down, thus even getting things going in 6th and 7th grade, so they start having a pattern, not that they can't change it, but hopefully recognize it.
Mm-hmm.
That should change these numbers.
That's really the direction that we should be going.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned before, I think the whole state sees that. It's just that we're slow to get there. In my opinion, we're really slow at getting there. I mean, you know, we've talked about that for a long time.
The state is slow to get there. I mean, returning statewide, but absolutely, we are not there yet.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
time.
the good information for us, and hopefully we'll see great results. Next, we have our Athletic Director, Paul Durbon, is going to talk about the Activities Summit.
Well, thanks for having me here. I think what I did is I pulled the data that was either presented or gathered from the summit just to present tonight. And one thing, I'm trying to shift from coaching voice to board meeting voice here. So excuse me if I have a little scratch in the voice. So in the first slide here that I've got, bringing to you, so the summit, again, just to recap, we tried to bring community members involved in sports in our community together, all in one group, get input, put our heads together, work towards solutions with concerns and common themes that we're seeing within our programs. It's really easy to get negative if we start focusing on some of the facts that we'll look at. And so that was one of the big pieces on that day, on that Saturday. I think it was the 26th of October. We just said we're moving forward in a positive way. We're working towards solutions. This isn't a gripe session and a complaint session. And so one thing I was very pleased with was the community members that showed up in support. Everybody agreed, and it seemed like everybody was on the right path. And so these statistics, even though they may look real negative at times, we got a lot of positives from it, and we'll get to some of that. So looking at our student body in Albert Lea, we've changed registration platforms over the last year. So from when I've stepped in last December until, so we just took the spring data from last year, this year's fall and winter. And actually, we did winter, spring, and fall to compile these numbers that you see up here. And we had about 46% of our student body that were in at least one activity, and that included the fine arts. And to me, that was just eye-opening statistic there. That majority of our population in our school aren't doing a co-curricular activity. They're not out for an extracurricular or a sport or a fine art. And so to me, I wanted to look at other data. When we start looking in, I saw a couple news articles that came out from Owatonna and Faribault newspapers, and they start comparing the conference and where all the schools wound up. And of course, Albert Lea ends up towards the bottom in their rankings that they might have. And so I started asking the question why and looking at the numbers, and feel that's part of my job. So looking closer, we only had 48 kids, and I believe that's an 8 through 12 statistic for the 3-sport athletes, 48 kids that were in 3 sports last year. And then since December of last year, we had 145 students that were ineligible for grades, behaviors, or chemical violations over that time period. So I think it's a real clear picture that we're losing the numbers game. Since the summit, I've dug in a little bit more, and we had some good feedback from our community. When we look, if you want to go to the next slide there, Ashley, the numbers in blue I want you to kind of look at. These were numbers that came back from other activities directors in the conference. The others still haven't reported or got back to me on the question, but you see some numbers there that are pretty eye-opening. Mankato East had 72% participation. Northfield had 82%. Owatonna only had a number for sports. They didn't have their fine arts, so 56% is if they had 0 kids out for fine arts. And so I'd project they'd probably be more around that 80% mark. Then you see the Rochester schools are a little closer to our percentage, and Winona 75%. But when you look at the enrollment, that percentage involved in activities, I just took from the Department of Education their enrollment from last year, 9 through 12, and took that percentage, and I did that with Albert Lea. And you look at the numbers on the right, those are approximate how many kids are out for a sport or a fine art in their communities, and we're drastically lower than everybody else. So yep,
sorry.
go ahead.
So just to understand, so that's the first red one is sports alone, and then the second one is fine arts alone.
No, so the third column from the left is the total enrollment of those schools 9 through 12. They're all approximate, especially ours, since we went from December last year till after this fall, just to get the winter, spring, and fall. But if we did a building count today, I think 9-12, we had 980 kids. So taking our percentage of participation, basically what I'm saying in that far right column, those approximate values are how many kids each school, 9 through 12, has out for sports and fine arts combined. I'd like to dig into the data a little bit deeper. I wouldn't be able to with other schools, so I kept it real simple in this
And
comparison.
then backing up one slide to to that 145, is that also 9 through 12?
That is an 8 through 12 statistic, and so is the 48.
Okay, 8 through 12.
Yeah.
And it's coming from December of last year, so it's
Yeah, so
more than
when I
1
started,
year?
I started tracking so that we'd have accurate data, and I figured if we had a winter, spring and fall season, we had a decent, it's a good way to track. And it's not complete, but it gives us a good starting point, and as we move forward, I'm going to keep getting more year-to-year, season-to-season data breakdowns for us to look at.
And is every student counted just once? For example, if they were ineligible last year and then this year, would it be twice, or is it just?
Unduplicated, so just once.
Unduplicated,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. And just the idea behind this slide is comparison and general idea. That's why I stuck to approximates. Just simplify this to get us a good picture of why are we behind everywhere else in the conference. And when you look at that, we're participating in activities against Northfield, who has almost 3 times as many kids out for sports and fine arts. So when we're comparing ourselves with the conference, we need to do something about these numbers. And I think it's something that we can seriously look at and try and make strides towards this. So from the summit, this was one thing we looked at. We didn't have this data yet. I was asked at the summit by a lot of community members to dig and find some solutions of what we're looking at compared to the conference. And I thought this was a nice little thing to throw in here for tonight, because I do have a little bit more info at this point. So this I did bring to the summit. We talked about our head coach, how long they've been coaching for. The average coach in Albert Lee has been coaching for 4.2 years in the head position. We've got a lot of young coaches. The longest tenure head coaches are Sean Reeve and Jim Haney. I think 17 and 18 years experience there. But then it drops off pretty drastically down to, I think, 10 years, and then the next coach after that is 4 years of coaching experience. And so we've got a lot of young coaches, and we've got a lot of coach turnover, and that's something we should look internally at, is what's going on with these coaches. And 8 new head coaches in the last 10 months since I've been in this role. And so that's a lot for any district. And so hopefully we can find some consistency there in our programs. And then people really get focused on our success rates. So we looked at our records from last winter, this last spring, and this fall, and it's pretty eye-opening statistic there in our overall wins and losses. And there's obviously some sports you can't really measure team wins and losses, but 85, 189, and 4 was our overall win-loss record there.
It'd be interesting if you could pull out Big 9 and separate that to see the difference there.
We could. I could go that route at some point. So.
I just think you look at our numbers game and all these other communities, they have so many youth to pick from that sometimes it makes it a really uphill battle, and the best we have is such a small number.
Right. And so, Dennis, I think that comment there that you're making is having a large pool of youth students to draw from. They're retaining numbers, and I'd say their attrition rates are similar in the percentage of kids that quit, but they have more to begin with, right? And so what we have to look at in a smaller district is ways to get larger participation rates at younger ages. And that's one thing I'll talk about some strategy from our end as coaches and from the summit that we talked about too that we can get to. So one other eye-opening thing that I brought to our community is the downside of sports specialization. As a coach in the community, I've battled this. Whether my athletes aren't 3-sport athletes and my wrestlers aren't going out for multiple sports, or if others coaches' kids aren't out for multiple sports. And I think it's healthy for us to promote kids to partake in 2-3 sports. 3-sport athletes are going to be important to us. We can't afford not to share them, especially our better athletes. Some examples might be, a football player could really develop some skills in the wrestling room with me, or vice versa. And we should really be trying to advocate for that in all of our sports. Good hockey players transition to good softball or baseball players, and those things we need to share. If we start trying to specialize. If a kid only does one sport, that's an issue. And we want to make it clear, we want our kids to excel in a sport, and we want them to have a strong suit, and same with fine arts. But I'd love to see them, let's use fine arts as an example, I'd love to see them in choir and orchestra or multiple areas, or get into the musical as well, and those things. So the more kids we can get doing multiple things and sharing students, the better it is going to be for us. When we talk about sports, there's a huge risk in injury if we specialize. I've got some data that I've pushed on our coaches at this point. A pretty simple rule of thumb: if a student is participating in a sport for more than 8 months of the school year, so it's the same sport for 8 months, there's a higher risk of soft tissue injuries. And then there's a really simple general guideline for our coaches that we kind of brought forward after the summit. The student's age, let's say a 10-year-old, shouldn't have more than 10 hours of practice in a week. And if you do, you start threatening with, or you start getting threats of overuse injuries. So the 15-year-old shouldn't have more than 15 hours of practice in a week. And so we can start pushing some of this from our coaches to our youth coaches and to our parents, and make sure that people are well educated here to make sure we don't have injuries or specializing with students. So I guess we can move on to another slide here. So a strategy that I'd like us to look at, and this is something that we brought forward and discussed in the summit, and a lot of good discussions have come from it since, especially with our high school coaching staff. One, we need to try and increase participation. So a lot of different discussions have occurred from that. So first and foremost, we need to make activities more accessible. And there's a lot of different things that we can start discussing as a school district and how we can do that. I've challenged our coaches to think about how they can make their programs more accessible at the high school, and also in the youth levels, how can we get our youth programs and middle school programs more accessible. We need to generate 3-sport athletes. We need to share kids. Stop fighting each other in scheduling and seasons. A lot of times our seasons are overlapping and we lose kids for one another, and we need to start promoting our programs. Again, be supportive of other seasons and seasons that are in session. And then the other piece, we're working on fees with the Education Foundation. Some pretty early discussions about how we can help reduce fees, and there's been some, I think some donations again this year, and they want to focus on that piece, is how can we reduce fees for our programs. In our last head coaches meeting with the participation piece, we talked a lot about the language barriers. How can we get information out in different languages, and we keep coming back to, we just need to be intentional about getting to our success coaches and leaning on them for some help and getting some translated versions of our content that we're pushing out and letters that are going out to families. We talk about transportation being a concern and starting to generate some ideas of how we can work around that and scheduling our practices. And then the accessibility piece with our middle school programs coming back, they're huge. Kids can go right after school to a middle school program. That's a lot more accessible than if their parents have to try and drive them around in the evening. So some good, beginning discussions there about accessibility and increasing participation. So, yep, Dennis?
I really like the idea with the transportation piece. One of the issues that happens, and it makes it difficult, a lot of times is the children, whether it's a concert or after a game, getting them home, and the coaches end up waiting and waiting and waiting. But if we can work with Smart Transit or with Cedar Valley, even if we can get the kids vouchers or coins, so we can get them home after the event, so we can get them those rides. It's amazing how big that barrier is, and we really have to insulate the coaches so that they don't get caught in a situation where they almost feel obligated to have to take a child home. And I think the more we can find in that area, I think that might open the door on quite a bit of it.
I agree, and that was a lot of the feedback we got from at the summit was actually about transportation and facilities and just accessibility there. And so some good discussions starting, and I think they'll continue. And I intend to help continue that discussion as we move forward. And so let's go back one more. And so the other parts of this strategy then, so we talked about the number of kids ineligible. I think we can really work on that piece. So what parts can we control? We can really work on, as coaches and families and community members, and producing good students first. I think, and I truly believe this, I say this to my wrestlers, the qualities of a good student carry over to qualities in other aspects of your life, and especially in sports. So we can really, hammer that message home. We need to be educating families on drugs, alcohol, and nicotine, avoid any of those chemical violations that are occurring. And the education piece is something we need to be proactive with. And so we're going to be mixing those pieces in the parent meeting settings and try and find other ways. For example, our leadership council that we've started, the students there are working on some ideas. How can we get into, I think there's a program that's called SWAY that's starting in the middle school. And they're already bouncing around ideas how they can help in those settings, and just getting the word out about these pieces to help avoid some of those ineligible situations. And then clearly communicating our policy. And the last piece is just embracing culture change.
So Paul, just a quick question. I think you had 143 students ineligible, is that correct?
I think it was 145, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Of the students that were ineligible, how many were because of violations, of chemical violations?
The majority were academic violations. I don't have the stat in front of me to break down, but the majority were academic violations. I would like to dig into that data at some point and just as a community take a closer look, right? So.
And what is your opinion of our current policy as far as ineligibility?
I support it. I appreciate the fact that there's education components mixed in. It's really hard to get those policies correct. I fear that if we change routinely, that we're always going to be chasing our tail. And I think I've mentioned before, I think and you see it, we're looking for data to support it. If the data is showing that it's not working, then I think the discussion starts about where we need to go. And I think everybody can value that. And so we need to take a close look at it with something to support it. And, there's a lot of theories, but let's see what it looks like in Albert Lea and what it's doing in our community. So.
And what are you looking for as far as supporting data? Do we want to see our wins increase? Do we want to see students come back and be successful and not ineligible another year? What are you looking for?
I'd like to see reduced repeat offenders, in a perfect world, and then compare it to other policy, what's happening in those scenarios. And maybe there's something that's working somewhere else too, and that's a scenario, if it's not working here, we can look at. But in the meantime, yes, I support it. I think it's good. I think there's some language pieces we can discuss as we move into next school year to help us navigate this policy in aligning to the high school league, and that's what we tend to lean on when there's any gray area, but we can clean that up a little. But yeah.
I see that, although the number is high, it really shows we are holding the students accountable, and they have to be responsible for themselves. So the issues academically, although it might be a struggle, or the chemical usage, once that happens though, and I see it happening, is working really hard with those students to understand what they did and why it happened, but keep moving that forward. And it's going to be a challenge. It'd be nice to see that number lower, but it's going to be the students educating the students and say, hey, you need to follow through on those things or you're going to be in this situation.
I agree, and I think big picture, we're doing a lot of things to help support that and drive positive decisions within our student body, and hopefully we see results. So.
And is the 145 out of the 454, or would that be in addition to the 454? Is it included in that 454 number?
Can you go back to that slide? So I did not subtract from this 454 you mentioned here. So that would be the approximate number of students we have out for sports. They would be subtracted from this as well, yes. But it's not a permanent. No, they have, in most consequences, the first offense is 2 week, 2 events, in most academic, and that's the majority of them. So they're out for a portion of our season, but it is eye-opening, yes. Yeah. So.
And one other thought when it comes to the fee part and accessibility, it's always been an issue that when students are younger, the families turn in the free and reduced lunch forms, and then fees are less. In high school, the free and reduced numbers diminish greatly, even though the family situation probably hasn't changed. I think they don't report. Is there any way to maybe facilitate potential athletes accessing that support, reducing stigma surrounding that whole thing, making it easier for them to understand.
It's certainly
maybe fees.
Concern. We don't want people to feel uncomfortable having to ask for support in those scenarios. So I don't know if there's a perfect solution. Our online registration really helps because they don't have to come in person and ask or say that they need financial assistance. So that piece does help. And I think, in working with the Education Foundation and the Tiger Funds, we can try and come up with new ideas. And Leanne Dulitz has been a point of contact for me in discussion, starting these discussions about fees. And she's had similar questions about how can we make that an easier process for families. I do know that other districts are trying different things to try and get people to report their free and reduced numbers. And I'd be curious to see other strategies that other districts are using. So, okay, you can go ahead.
I have absolutely no data to support this contention, but I would assume that perhaps the arrangement where students can waive all or part of their activity fee by virtue of being on a free and reduced lunch roster would encourage people to apply for that status because they'd save some real money that way.
Correct.
Would you care to comment on that? I have no, as I said, I have no data to support
so one
that,
thing
but it
I'd
would
like
seem
us
logical.
to look at moving forward, and our fee structure, and the reason I started thinking about this was our fee structure is pretty complicated when trying to set up our online registration. It's tough to navigate, and so I started thinking about ways to simplify. And when you look at it, there's some scenarios where a student that qualifies for free lunch may have an $8 fee still, or some, I forget the specific dollar amount, and then a reduced lunch will be a $30 fee, and so it's not completely waived. And so maybe there's a way we can simplify that process, and it's something that we should explore moving forward, especially if we do restructure fees for any reason. But yeah, I think that could be a selling point to help our community to apply for free and reduced lunch. One thing that I want people to be aware of is that there's a lot of data privacy that goes into free reduced lunch information. So any data that I pull, I need to work with our food service on, and they've been great about helping me get information and data, numbers. But it's certainly something that's very private, and we make sure that as a district we respect that. And I think that will help, the community knows that. If they know that, it might help them be more willing to come forward with that information.
Getting them the equipment that they need, whether it's in a sport or extracurricular, whether it's music, so they have the ability to have access to the instruments or other things. I think there's probably a lot of students out there, and it's that never-ending challenge of finding a way to get them.
I agree, and I think there's a lot of people in our community and a lot of people in this room that we're striving for accessibility and getting instruments in the students' hands, and also in our Education Foundation. And that was one question Leanne had brought to me was, is there a way we can get more instruments to our 5th and 6th graders that are just starting, and just so they can try the instruments? And so I think we're all aware, and we're trying to move that direction. I agree. So.
And I think the more boundaries we can remove along the way are always helpful. I don't know how things go now, but I know years ago I helped some kids through sports, and the extra unrequired things like the photos or the warm-up suit that the family buys on its own, that was not affordable by all the kids. And It was a point where, they didn't feel that they could participate because they weren't able to have those extra things.
And so I'd like to comment on that. I think it's a good point, Jill. Our communities borrowed a lot of ideas from maybe some more well-to-do communities where there's booster fees, or there's you pay for your own uniforms, or there's you have to sell so many tickets, and then the parents end up eating some of those. And so at our summit, we had a good talk about that piece, and just encouraged our booster clubs to find other ways to raise funds where we might not be putting the stress on the families as much, and just what's the fundraiser actually doing to our programs in our numbers. And so just challenge them to start taking a look at that piece. And then with our high school programs, our coaches, we've talked in our last coaches meeting about really changing those fundraising methods. And I think we're going to start seeing it moving forward. I'd use our wrestling community as an example. We're eliminating the ticket sales for basket nights and taco nights. And We'll collect money at the door for those that choose to come. Our middle school fee, our booster programs fee is waived. It's $0 this year for middle school wrestling. And so we're trying to be creative, and I've pushed this to the rest of our high school programs, and I think you're going to start seeing within some of the programs different ways to make our middle school and youth programs more accessible, and I think that'll be a good start.
Yeah, and Paul, along those lines, boosters clubs or a combination of the boosters clubs combined could, working with the foundation, establish an endowment, contribute to the foundation and establish an endowment. And we have endowments for a lot of things, mostly scholarships, but that would generate funds to subsidize the activity fee. In any manner, we could work that out, you know, across the board, or more appropriately for those who have trouble paying the fee.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yes.
just get the boosters clubs to have a fundraising or include in their fundraising projects monies that would be contributed to an endowment that would be monitored by the Education Foundation.
Yeah. I agree that that's probably a good route to go. The Education Foundation is a good foundation to work with. They're putting a lot of money into our schools in different ways, and education and the fees for programs is one that they're focused on reducing right now.
Yeah, but we don't put money into any kind of a program unless we have the money, and the way endowments, contributions is where we get our money.
Right. So the last piece that I brought to our community and in our summit was just, we're not going anywhere with this strategy unless we have the culture to support it. And the quote I have up there is, the culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And so we can say what we want, but if it's just words on the wall, it's not helping us. So I just encourage people to really buy into this culture change initiative, support these strategy elements that we're bringing in, and hopefully we see good things moving forward. Since the summit, I gathered some feedback. I had a long list of feedback. I was hungry for feedback going into the summit, and we got pros and cons from everybody that attended. We surveyed people. We broke into small groups. These are kind of some key points. Starting with the positives, our community was very pleased with our new facility updates. That was probably the most common positive comment that we got back, is that we're pleased with the facilities and the updates that are coming. They're happy with community involvement. There was a lot of positive comments regarding the number of opportunities that Albert Lea provides, and I think when we look at our sports and our fine arts programs, we do have a lot of opportunities, especially if we dig deeper into our clubs and other activities at the high school or school activities. We do offer a lot. And then there was appreciation for middle school sports coming back. The concerns that came up that were kind of common themes were lack of numbers for our sports and activities. Something that we saw in the data there. There's concerns regarding a weight room and strength training program, and that's something that we're working on. I think it's going to be a focal point moving forward. Accessibility of facilities, continuing conversations and reflecting on this. So, I'm working with, what I need to do is dig more into what accessibility concerns are there, and how do we go about addressing those, because there's systems in place, and we just got to make sure they're working for our community. There's concerns with coach turnover, and we brought that data up too. We got a lot of coaches that leave, and how do we begin keeping coaches here? And then a couple other pieces that were kind of a general thing. There was a lot of excitement about the culture change, and we at the summit talked a lot more than just the data. We talked about what we're doing with our student leaders, what kind of language we're working on with our coaches and our students. We talked about where this was coming from and where we're going moving forward, and so felt a little feedback there was just excitement about this whole initiative to begin with. And then recommendations to look that I got were to look internally, and those recommendations were well received. So, for example, when we look at our facilities, I need to get more answers. What are our shortcomings there where people are feeling like they don't have accessibility to our facilities? Because I'd say most of us in our schools want them to be accessible. just get more answers from our student population. But why aren't you out for activities? 54% of our kids don't do anything. Why are they not? And so just to get more data and look internally, that was, that hit me square in the chest. That's something that we certainly need to do, and we will. So, and that's all I have, I think. So.
Okay. Great report. It's interesting, I thought. I learned a lot tonight, and so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to point out that I had the opportunity to attend the summit, and there were a lot of great aha moments, but I loved, there was a coach that stood up and said that they have these, I don't know, the acronyms were.
So we said some key phrases within common language that we use.
Yeah, like, anyway, the student athlete heard the coach complain, and so it's one of the acronyms is not to complain, obviously, and defend. What is it?
BCD.
Yeah.
Blame, complain, and defend.
Yes. So the coach was identifying that at one point during a game he was complaining about a call from the referee, and the student athlete kind of called him out on it and said, "Hey, BCD, coach, BCD." And so that's really cool about the culture piece.
Right. So one thing I just want to comment on it. So one thing I'm seeing is that when we're working with our student leaders and our coaches on developing common language and really working on culture and establishing the culture we want, we get a lot of these signal phrases like BCD or E plus R equals O. An event plus your response equals the outcome. And so these common language pieces that we talk about, I could make a list of about 50 right now that we've implemented with our student leaders and with our coaches. And we're starting to see that come through in the classroom. We're starting to see come through in practices and at games. And I think that's a sign that maybe, this is valuable, what we're doing. A simple thing like Kim mentioned there, hey, coach, no BCD. That's a signal phrase where, okay, we're all on the same page. We can't control this. Let's move forward. And so just getting the right frame of mind and teaching the concepts within competition or life, how we use them, I think they apply. So.
And I would be curious to know, too, along the way, if you've heard anything back about, I know you said you'd want it to see more fine arts participation in the high school, and I'm just wondering, have you heard if people are having a hard time fitting it into their schedule at this point, chorus and band, or chorus and orchestra?
I think we're always going to face challenges with those multi-sport or multi-activity kids. For example, we've got some divers that were also in the musical, or you run into those situations. And the biggest piece is collaboration and planning. For example, Miss Haney has some choir students, and we scheduled unintentionally a JV hockey game on a date that she had a concert, and so we're working to rearrange that schedule so that kids don't have to choose, right? And so in an ideal world, that's what we would want to do. There's not going to be a perfect solution with the number of activities that we do offer, but I think it's just the nature of the beast. And so planning and collaboration will be key there, yeah. The other thing I want to throw out there with the summit, we didn't extend the invitation to all of our fine arts because the overwhelming concerns that I had gotten coming in my experiences, people were more concerned in my observations with our sports than our fine arts. I feel like our fine arts are very strong. If we do build on this, I think there may be avenues to bring the fine arts in that would be beneficial to them. But, at this point, where our concerns were, they weren't necessarily with our fine arts programs. And so I don't want people to feel slighted that they weren't involved in this piece. It was strategic in who we invited, so.
Our next item of business is Special Education Restrictive Procedures Plan. Tammy?
Hello. I think most of you are familiar with our restrictive procedure plan. It's been in place for several years. And this is just our plan that details how we deal with physical holding or seclusion in our district for kids that might be in crisis. And so we did make just a few changes, and that includes the appendixes A through C. And the reason we changed these is because it matches our SPED forms due process software that all of our special ed teachers use in the district. And it includes all the information that the state requires. So when I provide the due process report to MDE, that has all the information on it, and it just made it a little bit cleaner for all of us. Do any of you have any questions or concerns?
Okay, this is an action item. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the special education restrictive procedure plan signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Next, we have two policies for the second reading. The first one is Policy 513 on student promotion, retention, and program design. Kathy.
So I have not heard from any board members, any concerns. I'm not sure if any more are coming forward. You have one more reading next month.
Oh, okay, so it's, okay.
Yeah, yep, so you get to,
I'm just jumping.
I know, it's good stuff.
Okay, and then Policy 722, public data requests.
Same thing. Any concerns, send them my way, and we'll address them at the last reading. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Yep.
We have no further business, so to entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Is there a second? Second. Meeting is adjourned.